Nick Adams was an American film and television actor and screenwriter. He was noted for his roles in several Hollywood films during the 1950s and 1960s, along with his starring role in the ABC television series The Rebel. Decades after Adams' death from a prescription drug overdose at the age of 36, his widely publicized friendships with James Dean and Elvis Presley would stir speculation about both his private life and the circumstances of his death. In an all-movie synopsis for Adams' last film, reviewer Dan Pavlides wrote, "Plagued by personal excesses, he will be remembered just as much for what he could have done in cinema as what he left behind." Early life. Adams was born Nicholas Aloysius Adam Schock in Nanticoke, Pennsylvania, to Peter Adam Schock and Catherine Kutz. His father was a Ukrainian-born anthracite coal miner. In 1958 he told columnist Hedda Hopper, "We lived in those little company houses. They were terrible. We had to buy from the company store and were always in debt and could never leave." The family did leave when he was 5 years old, after Adams' uncle was killed in a mining accident. "My father piled all our belongings into an old jalopy, with our bedding on top," Adams recalled. "We didn't know where we were going." He started driving, and ran out of gas and money in Jersey City, New Jersey at Audubon Park. "A man came over and started talking to us, a Mr. Cohn. He said to my father, 'You look like you need a job,' and my father said, 'I do.'" Adams' father was given a job as janitor of an apartment building, along with living quarters in the basement. Eventually, they moved to Van Nostrand Avenue between Ocean Avenue and Rutgers Avenue. His mother worked for Western Electric in Kearney, New Jersey. While still in high school, Adams was offered a playing position in minor league baseball with the St. Louis Cardinals, but turned it down because he was uninterested in the low pay. He briefly worked as a bat boy for the Jersey City Giants, a local minor league team. Some sources recount Adams made money as a teenager by hustling pool games. Early acting in New York. In 1948, while visiting New York, 17-year-old Adams wandered into an audition for Sean O'Casey's play, The Silver Tassie, and met Jack Palance. When Palance, whose father was also a Ukrainian coal miner from northeastern Pennsylvania, asked why he wanted to act, Adams replied, "For the money." Palance introduced him to the director of The Silver Tassie as Nick Adams. After the director declined to hire him as an extra, Palance sent Adams to a nearby junior theater group where he got his first acting job playing the role of Muff Potter in Tom Sawyer. Adams' friends teased him about his acting ambitions. "Everybody thought I was crazy," he recalled. "My father said, 'Nick, get a trade, be a barber or something.' I said, 'But Pop, I want to do something where I can make lots of money.' You can't make lots of money with just a trade." After a year of unpaid acting in New York, Adams hitchhiked to Los Angeles. Hollywood career. Struggling actor Adams was an avid reader of fan magazines and came to believe he could meet agents and directors by being seen at the Warner's Theatre in Beverly Hills. He got a job there as doorman, usher, and maintenance man, which included changing the notices on the theater marquee. He was fired after he put his own name up as a publicity stunt. Adams' earliest reported paid acting job in Los Angeles was a stage role at the Las Palmas Theater in a comedy called Mr. Big Shot. Although he was paid about $60 a week, Adams had to pay $175 for membership in Actors Equity. He also earned $25 one night at the Mocambo nightclub, filling in for Pearl Bailey, who had fallen ill. 8 years later, Hedda Hopper told Adams she recalled writing about him at the time, and he replied by reciting back to her, "Nick Adams, gas station attendant from New Jersey, did an impersonation of Jimmy Cagney in a scene from Glass Menagerie." After 3 years of struggle and optimistic self-promotion, his first film role came in 1951, an uncredited one-liner as a Western Union delivery boy in George Seaton's Somebody Loves Me. This allowed him to join the Screen Actors Guild, but he was unable to find steady acting work. even when, creatively, claiming he had appeared with Palance in the Silver Tassie in New York. Undaunted, Adams joined a theater workshop run by Arthur Kennedy. In January 1952, Adams enlisted in the United States Coast Guard, supporting actor 2.5 years later. In June 1954, his ship docked in Long Beach Harbor, and after a brash audition for director John Ford, during which Adams did impressions of James Cagney and other celebrities while dressed in his Coast Guard uniform, he took his accumulated leave and appeared as Seaman Reba in the 1955 film version of Mr. Roberts. Adams then completed his military service, returned to Los Angeles, and at the age of 23, based on his work in Mr. Roberts, was able to secure a powerful agent and signed with Warner Brothers. Adams had a small role in Rebel Without a Cause. Also that year, Adams played the role of Bomber the Paperboy in the widely popular film adaptation of Picnic, which was mostly filmed on location in Kansas and starred William Holden, Kim Novak, and Susan Strasberg. He was not perceived by casting directors as tall or handsome enough for leading roles, but during the late 1950s Adams had supporting roles in several successful television productions, including one episode of Wanted, Dead or Alive starring Steve McQueen, and films such as Miss Brooks, No Time for Sergeants, Teacher's Pet, and Pillow Talk. James Dean Adams may have first met James Dean in December 1950 while jitterbugging for a soft drink commercial filmed at Griffith Park. Adams spent 3 years in the U.S. Coast Guard between the time this commercial was shot in late 1950 and the start of filming for Rebel Without a Cause in March 1955. Actor Jack Grinnage, who played Moose, recalled, "Off the set, Nick, Dennis, and the others would go out together almost like the gang we portrayed, but Jimmy and Corey Allen were not a part of that. They became friends during filming." During breaks, Dean and Adams entertained cast and crew with impersonations of Marlon Brando and Elia Kazan. A 1955 Warner Brothers press release quoted Dean as saying, "I shall be busy for the rest of 1955, and Nick will be doing film work for the next 6 months. Come 1956, however, I wouldn't be surprised to find myself with Adams doing a 2-a-night nightclub routine or acting in a comedy by William Shakespeare when production was wrapped." Dean said in another press release, "I now regard Natalie, Nick, and Sal as co-workers. I regard them as friends. About the only friends I have in this town, and I hope we all work together again soon." Following Dean's 1955 death in an automobile accident, Adams overdubbed some of Dean's lines for the film Giant and dated co-star Natalie Wood. Adams tried to capitalize on Dean's fame through various publicity stunts, including a claim he was being stalked by a crazed female Dean fan, allowing himself to be photographed at Dean's grave in a contemplative pose, holding flowers, and surrounded by mourning teenage female fans, along with writing articles and doing interviews about Dean for fan magazines. He also claimed to have developed Dean's affection for fast cars, later telling a reporter, "I became a highway delinquent. I was arrested 9 times in 1 year. They put me on probation, but I kept on racing nowhere." Elvis Presley Adams' a widely publicized friendship with Elvis Presley began in 1956 on the set of Presley's film Love Me Tender. During the second day of shooting, Presley had admired James Dean, and when the singer arrived in Hollywood he was encouraged by studio executives to be seen with some of the hip, new, young actors there. Meanwhile, his manager Colonel Tom Parker was worried that Elvis' new Hollywood acquaintances might influence Presley and even tell him what they were paying their managers and agents. Elaine Dundee called Parker a master manipulator, who used Nick Adams and others in the entourage to counter possible subversion against him in control Elvis movements. She later wrote a scathing characterization of Adams brash, struggling young actor whose main scheme to further his career was to hitch his wagon to a star, the first being James Dean, about whose friendship he was noisily boastful. This made it easy for Parker to suggest that Nick be invited to join Elvis' growing entourage of paid companions, and for Nick to accept. Following Adams' hiring, there appeared a newspaper item stating that Nick and Parker were writing a book on Elvis together. Dundee also wrote, "Of all Elvis' new friends, Nick Adams, by background and temperament the most insecure, was also his closest." Adams was Dennis Hopper's roommate during this period, and the three reportedly socialized together, with Presley hanging out more and more with Nick and his friends, and glad his manager liked Nick. Decades later, Kathleen Tracy recalled Adams often met Presley backstage or at Graceland, where Elvis often asked Adams to stay over on nights. He and Elvis would go motorcycle riding late at night and stay up until all hours talking about the pain of celebrity and enjoying prescription drugs. Almost 40 years later, writer Peter Guralnick wrote that Presley found it good running around with Nick. There was always something happening, and the hotel suite was like a private clubhouse where you needed to know the secret password to get in, and he got to change the password every day. Presley's girlfriend June Winico complained the singer was always talking about his friend Adams and James Dean. She was also upset that Adams had started inviting himself to see Elvis, and Winico felt that she was trying to compete for Elvis' attention. Adams would talk often about Natalie Wood to Elvis, constantly discussing her figure and her beauty, something else that caused Winico to feel that she would soon lose Elvis to the glitz of Hollywood. Presley's own mother even commented about Adams, "He sure is a pushy little fellow." As with Dean, Adams capitalized on his association with Presley, publishing an account of their friendship in May 1957. In August 1958, after Elvis' mother Gladys died, Parker wrote in a letter, "Nicky Adams, sick, came out to be with Elvis last week, which, sick, was so very kind of him to be there with his friend, the Rebel and the King." By Nick Adams is a first-person account written by Adams about his friendship with Presley. The manuscript was written in 1956 by Nick during Presley's 8 days in Memphis when the singer returned home for his big Tupelo homecoming. The manuscript was discovered 45 years later by Adams' daughter, and published. The Rebel in 1959. Adams starred in the ABC television series The Rebel, playing the character Johnny Yuma, a wandering, ex-Confederate, journal-keeping, sawed-off shotgun-toting troubleshooter in the old American West. He is credited as a co-creator of The Rebel, but had no role in writing the pilot or any of the series episodes. Adams had asked his friend Andrew J. Fenady to write the pilot as a starring vehicle for him. The series' only recurring character, publicized as a Reconstruction beatnik, was played by Adams. He reportedly consulted with John Wayne for tips on how to play the role. Adams wanted Presley to sing the theme song for The Rebel, but the show's producer wanted Johnny Cash, who made it a hit. Guest stars appearing on the series during its 2-year run included Dan Blocker, Johnny Cash, Leonard Nimoy, Tex Ritter, and Robert Vaughn. 76 half-hour episodes were filmed before the series was cancelled in 1961. Reruns were syndicated for several years. Adams went back to TV and film work, along with a role in the short-lived but critically successful television series Saints and Sinners. Twilight of Honor. Adams was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his performance as an unlikable murder suspect in the film Twilight of Honor, which featured the film debuts of both Linda Evans and Joey Heatherton. He campaigned heavily for the award, spending over $8,000 on ads in trade magazines. But many of his strongest scenes had been cut from the movie, and he lost to Melvyn Douglas. Toho Studios. In 1964, Adams had a leading role opposite Nancy Malone in an episode of the Outer Limits television series. A review of this episode written over 3 decades later would characterize him as an underrated actor. By this time Adams' career was stalling. He had high hopes his co-starring performance with Robert Conrad in Young Dillinger would be critically acclaimed, but the project had low production values, and both critics and audiences rejected the film. Also that year, Adams guest starred in an episode of the short-lived CBS drama The Reporter. In 1965, after publicly insisting he would never work in films produced outside the U.S., Adams began accepting parts in Japanese science fiction monster movies. He landed major roles in 2 science fiction epics from Toho Studios in Chiyoda, Tokyo. His first Japanese movie was Frankenstein Conquers the World, in which he played Drive, James Bowen, a radiologist working in Hiroshima who encounters a new incarnation of the Frankenstein monster. Adams next starred in the 6th Godzilla film, Invasion of Astro Monster, in which he played astronaut Glenn, journeying to the newly discovered planet X. In both film plots his character had a love interest with characters portrayed by actress Kumi Mizuno. Actors at Toho Studios later fondly remembered Adams as a team player. On the set of Monster Zero, Adams and co-star Yoshio Tsuchiya reportedly got along well and played jokes on each other. Adams made 4 films in Japan during 1965 and 1966. During this time he also co-starred with Boris Karloff in Die, Monster, Die, a gothic horror sci-fi movie filmed in England. 1967. TV episodes and low-budget films. In early 1967 Disney released Mosby's Marauders, a now mostly forgotten but successful Civil War drama told from a Southern perspective with Adams in the role of a cruel Union Army sergeant. Adams guest-starred in 5 episodes of 4 TV series that year, including an installment of his friend Robert Conrad's The Wild Wild West, an appearance in Combat, and 2 episodes of Hondo. Throughout 1967 and early 1968 he also worked in 3 low-budget films. One of these was Mission Mars, which, having been released the same year as Stanley Kubrick's widely praised 2001, A Space Odyssey, has been described as rarely seen and utterly dreadful. Adams' costume for this movie included an off-the-shelf motorcycle helmet. Reacting to Mission Mars over 30 years later, sci-fi reviewer Gary Westfall wrote, "The only quality that Adams could persuasively project on film was a desperate desire to be popular, to be liked, which helps to explain why Adams got his foot in many doors." Adams' last U.S. production was a more solid B picture, a stock car movie filmed in Iowa called Fever Heat. His last film appearance was in the little-seen Spanish-language western Los Asesinos filmed in Mexico City, Mexico. Marriage and children. Adams married former child actress Carol Nugent in 1959. Nugent had appeared in an episode of The Rebel. They had 2 children, Allison and Jeb Stewart. Adams' sometimes acrimonious marital problems reportedly interfered with his ability to get lucrative acting parts after 1963. While promoting Young Dillinger during a television appearance on The Les Crane Show in early 1965, Adams shocked the viewing audience with an announcement he was leaving his wife, seemingly without telling her first. The couple publicly announced a reconciliation a week later, but his career and personal life following this episode have been characterized as a tragic freefall. Adams and actress Kumi Mizuno may have had a short affair while he was working in Japan. "That's one of the reasons my parents were divorced," his daughter, playwright Allison Lee Adams, later said. "My dad had a penchant for becoming infatuated with his leading ladies. It was a way for him to take on the role he was playing at the time. By July 1965, Adams and Nugent were legally separated. Nugent filed for divorce in September. The following month, while Adams was in Japan, Nugent was granted a divorce and custody of the children. In January 1966, Adams and Nugent announced another reconciliation on a local television show, Bill John's Hollywood Star Notebook. However, in November 1966, Nugent resumed the divorce proceedings and obtained a restraining order against him, alleging Adams was prone to fits of temper, and in an affidavit charged he had choked her, struck her and threatened to kill her during the past few weeks. On January 20, 1967, Adams was waiting for a court hearing to start when he was served with a $110,000 defamation suit by Nugent's boyfriend, Paul Rapp, who later married Nugent. Nevertheless, 9 days later he was granted temporary custody of the children. His son Jeb Adams later recalled, "He saw it as a competition, basically, more than anything, of getting custody of us. But, a matter of a week or two later, he gave us back to my mom." Nugent later regained legal custody of the children.